Hello, children. This is Grandma Carla with Chapter 5 of Skylark, the sequel to Sarah Plain and Tall. Each day, Papa dropped a rope with a stone down the well to measure the water level. "Is it past the mark?" asked Sarah. Papa nodded. "How much, Jacob?" Papa held out his hands a foot apart. Caleb and I got up into the wagon to go to town. "Soon we'll have to haul water for the animals," said Papa. "We can do that," said Sarah. "We'll have to measure out our own water," said Papa as he climbed up. "But we already do that, Jacob." Papa looked down at Sarah. "We'll have to use less." Sarah stared at Papa and then got up to sit next to him. "We can do that too," she said firmly. We drove off down the road. After a while, Caleb poked his head between Sarah and Papa. Papa looked at him. "So, Caleb?" "I put the glass on the post," said Caleb. Papa nodded, but didn't say anything. "To measure the rain when it comes," Caleb added. "Thank you for that," said Papa. "You're welcome," said Caleb happily. He sat back in the wagon and folded his arms, and Papa smiled. All the way to town, I looked for green, but as far as I could see, the fields were brown. The wheat fields were dry. Turkey vultures circled in the distance. There was no green. Everything seemed slow in town, as if the heat had taken over. Papa left the wagon in the shade of the granary and slowly unloaded his last bags of grain from the wagon. Slowly he walked inside. Mr. Parkley's store was cool. Rose and Violet were there, Rose carrying Tom, who smiled at me. But Maggie had her arms around Carolyn, who was crying. "Carolyn, what's wrong, Maggie?" said Sarah. "Their well is dry," Maggie said softly. "Carolyn," said Sarah, "what can we do?" "There's nothing to do," Carolyn said, drying her tears. "We've already packed up." "Packed up?" said Sarah, shocked. "Where will you go?" "They have family," said Maggie. Carolyn took her packages and went to the door. She turned suddenly, her face sad. "Joseph says we'll come back," she said. "But we won't." "I know we won't." She opened the door and left. Maggie walked over to the door and looked out. "Surely we can do something," Sarah said. "We could haul water, Maggie. We would all work harder." Sarah's voice grew louder, and Caleb moved closer to me. "You can't just give up," said Sarah. "You can't just give up everything you've worked for." Maggie whirled around, her face angry. "You don't know how hard this is, Sarah," she said angrily. "You haven't been in this land of trouble before, this kind of trouble before." Sarah stared at Maggie and then at the others in the store. Maggie reached over and took Sarah's hand. She opened the door and pulled her outside. I watched the two of them cross the dusty street. Maggie's arm went around Sarah's, but they kept walking. Papa came out from the granary and watched them too, Matthew beside him. "Is Sarah angry?" asked Caleb. I looked down at his worried face. "No," I said, "Sarah's not angry," and Caleb sighed. "Sarah likes to make things right," he said. We watched without speaking, and then Joseph and Carolyn's wagon passed, all packed with chairs and clothes and a cupboard, pots and pans tied on. Sarah turned to watch it, and Papa watched it too from across the street, and then the wagon turned a corner and was gone. That is the end of Chapter 5. And this is Grandma Carla, and I love you.